The lecture hall of Veyrun Academy looked more like a cathedral than a classroom. Alien banners hung from vaulted ceilings, each stitched with sigils of empires that had ruled the stars for millennia. Holographic maps floated in the air, flickering with shifting constellations and sprawling front lines. Rows of cadets, scaled, furred, feathered, and chitin-plated, sat in tiered arcs, their gazes sharp with pride. At the very back, among them, sat a single human. Cadet Jace Caro, 19 years old, leaned forward in his seat. His uniform wasn't as ornate as the others, and his posture wasn't as stiff. His eyes, though, flint-gray and restless, were alive with the kind of hunger none of the others shared. For them, this was heritage. For him, it was survival. The instructor, Archon Veyrun, strode to the center of the hall. His form towered above them all, armored scales glowing faintly under the projectors. His voice rolled through the chamber like distant thunder. "Today's lesson," Veyrun declared, "is the study of apex species. 5 civilizations that earned dominance through conquest, cunning, and strength." With a flick of his taloned hand, the holograms shifted. One by one, figures appeared: the serpentine Jari, masters of biotech; the insected Creel, endless in number; the crystalline Vor, who wielded starfire; the brutal Keth, who lived for war; and the telepathic Syndra, whose empires stretched further than light itself. The chamber filled with murmurs of awe. "These 5," Veyrun continued, "stand as the peak of evolution's will. All others bend knee, or break." A smirk curled his scaled lips. "And so we ask, who dares believe themselves equal to such titans?" The silence was respectful, almost worshipful. No cadet moved. No cadet except one. Jace raised his hand. The hall turned as one, hundreds of alien eyes locking onto him. Some hissed. Others clicked mandibles or flared feathers in disgust. A ripple of disbelief rolled through the room. Veyrun's golden gaze narrowed. "Human!" His tone wasn't anger. It was curiosity dipped in disdain. "You have a comment?" Jace stood, his voice steady. "You said 5 apex species." "Yes," Veyrun rumbled. 5. More than your kind could ever dream to match." "Wrong," Jace said. "There's only one." The hall exploded with noise, shrieks, roars, laughter. Some cadets slammed their desks in mockery. Others leaned forward, barbs dripping from their tongues. Veyrun raised a claw, silencing them. His eyes gleamed with predatory amusement. "Only one? Speak carefully, human. Words in this hall weigh more than bones." Jace's jaw tightened. "You named conquerors, tyrants, parasites. None of them endured what humanity has. You want apex? Apex isn't just strength, it's surviving what should have killed you." A Syndra cadet sneered, her voice echoing across the amphitheater. "Your species crawled from dirt and begged for scraps at the galactic table. Without stolen ships and borrowed tech, you'd still be gnawing bones." Jace shot her a cold look. "Maybe. But we're still here. Every war we've fought, every empire that's tried to erase us, we adapt, we bleed, we come back sharper. That's why humanity doesn't need a seat on your list. We are the list." Gasps, hisses, and laughter clashed like weapons in the hall. Veyrun let the noise boil before speaking. His voice cut through like a blade. "Bold words. Dangerous words. Perhaps foolish words." He stepped closer, talons scraping the stone. "You believe your fragile kind superior to the 5? Jace didn't flinch. "I don't believe it. I know it." The silence that followed was electric. Veyrun leaned low, his shadow falling over the human cadet. "Then prove it." A panel in the floor slid open with a hiss. A training drone rose into the chamber, its plating gleaming with spikes, its limbs bristling with plasma edges. The machine's eyes burned crimson as it activated. "Fight," Veyrun ordered. "Show us this human apex. Or die as proof of your arrogance." The alien cadets erupted in cheers, chanting for blood. The drone's blades snapped open, humming with lethal energy. Jace's pulse hammered in his throat, but his face betrayed nothing. He stripped off his cadet jacket, tossing it aside. His muscles coiled. Ready? Fine, he muttered. Let's show them. The drone lunged. Jace moved. He dodged the first strike by inches, plasma slicing the air where his head had been. The heat scorched his skin, but he didn't stumble. The drone struck again, faster this time. Jace ducked, rolled, and came up with a metal fragment ripped from the floor panel. Not a weapon, just a shard. Aliens jeered from the stands. To them, this was humiliation. A human with scrap metal against a war machine. The drone lunged, blades slashing in a deadly rhythm. Jace parried with the shard, sparks spitting as metal screeched. His arm trembled under the force, but he redirected the strike into the wall. The drone recalibrated, pivoting for another strike. Jace's mind raced. He couldn't match its strength. But strength wasn't the point. He had to think like a human, desperate, cunning, unpredictable. The drone swept low. Jace vaulted onto its back, driving the shard into a seam between its plates. The machine shrieked in synthetic static, thrashing violently. Jace held on, teeth gritted, twisting the shard deeper until sparks burst in a shower. End it! Voices roared from above. The drone bucked, slamming him into the wall. Pain lanced through his ribs, but he didn't let go. He ripped free the shard, jammed it again into another seam, and snarled. You wanted proof? Here's proof. The drone convulsed. Its core whined. Then, with a final shudder, it collapsed to the floor in a smoking heap. Jace rolled clear, blood running from his forehead, chest heaving. He pushed to his feet, standing over the wreckage. His shard clattered to the ground. The hall was silent. Every alien cadet stared, disbelief carved into their faces. Even Veyrun's golden eyes were unreadable. Jace wiped blood from his brow and looked up at them all. His voice, hoarse but unshaken, carried across the chamber. You don't need 5 apex species. You only need one. Humanity. The silence broke. Not with cheers. Not with laughter. With something colder, fear. Veyrun's gaze burned into him, calculating. At last the Archon spoke, his voice low, heavy with promise. Very well, human. You've made your claim. But know this, in this galaxy, words spark wars. You've just declared one. The chamber lights dimmed, the banners shuddered in the artificial wind, and every cadet felt it, the shift. One human had just challenged the galaxy's hierarchy. And the galaxy would answer. The wreckage of the drone still smoked on the floor, sparks hissing into silence. Cadet Jace Caro stood above it, blood streaking his temple, chest rising and falling like a war drum. The silence in the hall was suffocating, no laughter now, no jeers. Just the raw weight of 100 alien eyes, watching a human who refused to kneel. Archon Veyrun's claws tapped against the stone floor. Each click echoed like a countdown. At last, his voice broke the silence. Impressive. Brutal. Primitive. But do not mistake one broken drone for proof of supremacy. Jace wiped the blood with the back of his hand. I don't need to prove supremacy. Just survival. The response rippled across the chamber like a spark hitting dry grass. Some cadets hissed with contempt. Others shifted uneasily, tails lashing, wings twitching. Survival wasn't glorious. It was defiance, the kind their own species had forgotten. Veyrun's gaze narrowed. You misunderstand. Survival is the floor. Apex means dominance. Jace's jaw clenched, but before he could reply, another cadet stood. Tall, armored in carapace, his mandibles clicked with fury. A Creole, heir to a brood said to span half a moon. This human insults the 5. I challenge him. The hall erupted. Cheers and shrieks of anticipation rolled through the amphitheater. Veyrun raised a clawed hand, and silence fell. He studied Jace, then the Creole. His lips curved. So be it. A trial. Jace's pulse hammered. He'd just finished one fight, ribs aching with every breath, but backing down here would erase everything he'd claimed. He met the Creole's alien stare and forced steel into his voice. Fine. Let's see how an apex fights. The arena was summoned instantly. The central floor panels sank, revealing a ring surrounded by energy barriers. The Creel dropped in first, his armored body gleaming under the pale light. He flexed bladed limbs that could cut through stone. Jace stepped down opposite him. No weapons this time. No shards of metal. Just fists, grit, and pain. Veyrun's voice boomed from above. This is not to the death. But victory is earned when your opponent cannot stand. He paused, talons curling. If you can manage that, human. The barrier shimmered closed. The Creel wasted no time. He lunged, a blur of bladed limbs. Jace ducked, the strike cutting a line across his shoulder. Hot blood spilled, but he ignored it. The Creel's strength was monstrous. If Jace tried to match power with power, he'd be finished in seconds. He had to think differently. The Creel struck again. Jace sidestepped, letting the blade scrape sparks from the floor. He drove a fist into the alien's side where the plates joined. It felt like punching steel. Pain jolted up his arm, but he'd found something, a seam. The Creel snarled, mandibles snapping. You delayed the inevitable. Jace spat blood onto the floor. That's what humans do best. The duel became a storm. The Creel pressed forward, each strike heavy enough to crush bone. Jace danced along the edge, rolling, ducking, countering with jabs and strikes aimed only at the weak seams. Each blow was small, but together they began to add up. Pain was constant. Slashes scored his arms, bruises blossomed across his ribs. Still he pressed on. He could feel the Creel's breathing grow ragged, movements slowing with frustration. In the stands, alien cadets had gone quiet again. This wasn't comedy anymore. It was something else, uncomfortable recognition. The Creel lunged in rage, overextending. Jace seized the moment. He slid under the strike, twisted, and leapt onto his opponent's back. His arms locked around the alien's throat, legs clamped down like a vice. The Creel thrashed, blades carving the air, but Jace's grip only tightened. Yield! Jace growled into the alien's ear. Never! The Creel hissed, choking. Jace's teeth clenched. Every muscle screamed, blood dripped down his face, but he held on. Humanity had clawed its way through extinction-level events with nothing but stubbornness. He could hold one alien. At last, with a guttural roar, the Creel collapsed to his knees, then to the floor. His limbs twitched, claws scraping weakly. He was down. The energy barrier shimmered and fell. Jace rolled off, gasping, chest heaving. He could barely stand, but he did. His eyes locked on Veyrun. Still think survival isn't enough? The silence was shattered by voices, angry, fearful, awed. Some cadets shouted for vengeance, others demanded order. The Syndra cadet from earlier rose, her telepathic voice echoing across their minds like a blade. He's dangerous. Humans cannot be allowed to believe this myth of supremacy. Crush him before it spreads. But others murmured differently. He shouldn't have lasted that long. The Creel had reach. The human had nothing. And yet... Veyrun raised his hand, silencing them all. His golden eyes never left Jace. You bleed. You struggle. And yet you stand. That is rare. His claws flexed. But rare does not mean safe. Understand this, human, you have painted a mark on your species. The Five will not ignore this insult. Jace steadied his breath, wiped blood from his brow, and met the Archon's stare. His voice was raw, but unwavering. Good. Let them notice. Let them finally see us. Veyrun's smile was thin, sharp. Then prepare yourself. You have started something far greater than you realize. That night, the academy dorms buzzed with whispers. Some cadets avoided Jace's gaze, unwilling to acknowledge him. Others spat curses as he passed. But a few watched with something new in their eyes. Not fear. Not contempt. Something closer to respect. Merrick, a fellow human cadet, and Jace's closest friend, met him outside the medbay. His arms were crossed, expression grim. You realize you've just declared war on every apex species in this academy? Jace winced as a medic sealed a cut across his ribs. Not war. A reminder. A reminder that humans don't know when to shut up. Merrick muttered. Jace smirked despite the pain. A reminder that we're still here. And if they think they can erase us, they're in for a fight. Merrick shook his head, but his lips twitched into a reluctant smile. You're insane. Maybe, Jace said softly, staring out at the storm of alien lights beyond the Academy's spires. His voice hardened into steel. But insanity is what kept humanity alive this long. Above them, hidden from cadet eyes, Archon Veyrun watched through the surveillance feeds. His claws tapped against the armrest as he replayed the fight. The human was reckless, untrained, imperfect. But there was something undeniable in the way he fought. Not skill. Not strength. Something else. Something dangerous. Veyrun murmured to himself, voice low. Apex is not claimed in words. It is carved in blood. Perhaps this human has begun carving. His eyes burned with thought. For the first time in centuries, the hierarchy of the galaxy felt less certain. And for the first time, he wondered if humanity's defiance was not arrogance, but prophecy. The Academy's combat arena had been scrubbed clean, the drone's wreckage removed, and the Creel cadet carried away in silence. But the weight of what happened lingered like smoke. Jace Caro's defiance hadn't just bruised one alien's pride, it had cracked the illusion of the Five's untouchable supremacy. By dawn cycle, the consequences arrived. The Council of Banners, made up of envoys from each apex species, convened within the Academy's central spire. Their banners, scaled, crystalline, feathered, chitinous, luminous, hung heavy in the chamber. For most cadets, the summons was a spectacle. For Jace, it was a trial. 2 guards escorted him in, their armor gleaming with contempt. Jace's bruises still ached from the duel, but he kept his shoulders square, his eyes forward. At the council's center stood Archon Veyrun. His gaze swept over the cadets before locking on to Jace. You claimed humanity stands alone as apex, Veyrun thundered. Today, you answer for those words. Asindra Anvu, her crystalline skull glowing faintly, leaned forward. Her voice pierced every mind at once. This arrogance cannot stand. One spark of rebellion spreads like wildfire. Crush it before it burns. The Creel delegate slammed his clawed fist on the table. The boy humiliated my brood's heir. Blood must answer blood. The Vor representative shimmered, molten fire pulsing beneath translucent skin. Perhaps destruction is not enough. Perhaps humanity must be erased before their defiance infects others. The chamber roared with agreement, overlapping threats filling the air like thunder. Veyrun raised his talons, silencing them. His golden eyes returned to Jace. You stand before powers older than your world's history. Speak your defense, or be judged. Jace drew a slow breath. He could feel Marek's gaze from the crowd of cadets, a silent anchor in the storm. His ribs ached, his lip was split, but his voice came out clear, steady. You call yourselves Apex. Titans. Eternal rulers. But what I've seen is fear. Fear that one human's words could shake your throne. The council hissed, growled, and rumbled in outrage, but Jace pressed on. You think survival is weakness. But survival is what makes us unstoppable. You burn our cities, we rebuild. You slaughter us, we adapt. You try to erase us, we endure. And every time we endure, we come back harder to kill. His voice rose, no longer defensive but defiant. That's why there aren't 5 apex species. There's only one. Humanity. The chamber erupted, half with fury, half with disbelief. Veyrun studied him, expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he raised a claw. Then let us test this claim, not in words, not in sparring matches, but in trial by fire. The banners flared. The council murmured. And the decision was sealed. Hours later, the cadets packed into the arena. This wasn't training. This was spectacle. At its center waited a construct unlike any Jace had faced, A hulking war drone forged from each species' technology. Creo blades, vorplasma, Jari biotech tendrils, Syndra telepathic dampeners, and Keth armor. It wasn't just a machine, it was a nightmare stitched from the galaxy's worst. Merrick gripped Jace's arm before he entered the ring. This isn't a fight. It's an execution. Maybe, Jace muttered, pulling free. But if I fall, I'll make sure they never forget how. The barriers shimmered closed. The construct's eyes ignited. And it charged. The first strike nearly killed him. A plasma blade scythed past, heat singing his hair. Tendrils lashed, wrapping around his arm. He tore free, skin blistering, ribs screaming with every movement. The crowd howled. Some cheered for his death, others simply watched in silence, unable to look away. Jace circled, searching for weakness. There had to be one. Nothing built by committee was flawless. He remembered the Creel duel: seams, joints, overconfidence. That was the key. The construct lunged again. Jace dove under its bulk, scraping his side raw, and jammed his fist into the joint behind its knee. Metal hissed, servos sparked, but the machine barely slowed. You can't overpower it! Merrick shouted from the stands. I'm not trying to! Jace barked back, teeth gritted. I'm outlasting it! Minutes bled into agony. The construct pummeled him, each blow threatening to end it. Cuts, burns, bruises layered across his body. But every strike he dodged, every seam he exploited, every second he stayed standing, it wasn't just survival. It was defiance. The machine faltered, just slightly, a stutter in its rhythm. Jace saw it. He leapt, driving both fists into the seam along its throat joint. Sparks burst. The construct roared, flailing, but Jace held on like a predator with its kill. He screamed through bloody teeth. You wanted proof? Here it is, humanity doesn't break. With one final, desperate wrench, he tore the joint free. The construct shuddered, staggered, then collapsed in a smoking heap. Jace collapsed beside it, gasping, bleeding, barely conscious. But he was alive. The arena was silent. No cheers. No jeers. Just silence. Archon Varix rose, his golden eyes unreadable. Cadet Jace Caro, he said, voice carrying through the chamber, has done what none of you believed possible. He stood against the strength of the five, and endured. He let the words settle like a blade pressed to every throat. Perhaps humanity is not merely prey. Perhaps they are a reminder of what Apex truly means. The Syndra envoy hissed into every mind at once. Asterisk. This is heresy. Asterisk. But the silence in the crowd said otherwise. Respect. Fear. Unease. The seed had been planted. Merrick forced his way to Jace's side, hauling him up. You're insane, he muttered again. Jace gave a bloody grin. Yeah. But now they'll never forget us. Above the banners, beyond the Academy's walls, the galaxy stirred. Empires would whisper of this day. The five would scheme. Wars would be planned. But one truth had been carved in blood: humanity was no longer ignored. And Jace Caro had made sure of it.